Welcome to to everyone online and here with us at Academy of Art, Department of Landscape Architecture, to our third fall speaker series. It is a pleasure to have Nahal Sohbati be presenting her master's thesis project, Ridge Lane, which we are very proud of her work. She won a national ASLA Award of Excellence in community design, which is a huge accomplishment, and we're just very happy that you were willing to take the time and come and share your project with us. So with that, and I'll just say Nahal is about to graduate, so this is sort of the yay, a culmination of a number of years of work. So the way we'll do this is Nahal will give her talk, and then we'll do questions afterwards. And because I don't have a mic on me, and neither does anyone in the audience, they will ask questions, and then I'll say them back to you, or you'll repeat them.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you, and we're looking forward to hearing you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and giving me the opportunity to share Ridge Lane with you. So I'm going to talk about my project, Ridge Lane. So Ridge Lane is a vacant lot in south of San Francisco in a neighborhood called Ingleside, which is a very densely populated neighborhood of residential buildings. Ridge Lane is 15 foot wide, and it's about quarter of a mile long, and it's composed of 5 different parcels that is separated by city streets. And each of these parcels have their unique characteristics. They start with the first parcel that is very flat with 2% slope, and it gets steeper as it goes further, and it ends with parcel 5 that it has 50% slope, and it's not accessible at this time. So for many years, the neighbors in this neighborhood used Ridge Lane as a convenient shortcut through their neighborhood, and also to connect to the transit hub of their neighborhood, such as BART and Muni stations. However, because of its steep condition and rocky characteristic, it wasn't accessible to everyone. And also because Ridge Lane is known as no man's land, it was attracting a lot of crime, such as loitering and dumping of garbage. And so it made it a very unpleasant experience for neighbors to go through this vacant space. Okay, so as a quick history of the site where Ridge Lane is located, it used to be famous for fields of wildflower, where it attracted many people during the year to pick wildflowers. So there was 2 different housing development that they started on Ingleside, where they didn't align properly, and as they grow, they end up in this 15-foot wide lot that is Ridge Lane today. So Ridge Lane is known as a paper street, which means it's only a street on a paper, and in reality it doesn't exist. And a proof of this fact is having 2 different naming on both sides of Ridge Lane, and also this bend that connects these 2 streets together. So about 8 years ago, a group of neighbors saw this potential in this vacant lot and decided to change it. They worked with different city agencies such as DPW and Parks Alliance and start this revitalization of Ridge Lane. And that was when they came to our school and asked our studio to work on conceptual design so they can envision the future of their neighborhood park. And after a series of presentation, they really liked my design and decided to work on it for a feasible design for the build out. So after that, we went to different community meetings. We had one community meeting every month, and where we went to different sites that had similar situation as Ridge Lane, so that neighbor can see what's happening in different neighborhoods. And also we had design charrettes and community engagements so that neighbor can share their hopes and their fears of what they want to see on the site and what they don't. One of the main things that really formed my design was this comment that all of them wanted to have a safe path of travel with a straight line of sight through the parcel, as well as having a design that is unique to Ridge Lane, and it speaks of, and it can promote this identity of the whole neighborhood. So for me to really understand what makes Ridge Lane unique and what makes it different from different vacant lots in other parts of the city, I went back there again many times. And so when I was there, I noticed there's more butterflies that we normally notice in the city. So that made me very curious. So I went back and researched on butterfly habitats. So there's this there's this behavior in butterflies and some other insects where they fly fly to the highest location of their habitat to find proper mate, and that is called hilltopping. And Ridge Lane, because of its southeast sun exposure and because it's blocked from prevailing winds, as well as its location on the top of the ridge, as its name implies, it creates this perfect location for butterflies' hilltopping behavior. So that really reinforced my design concept, and for the design I knew I wanted the straight line of sight, but also I used this pattern that symbolizes, it's like it's an abstraction of venation of butterfly wings. And this pattern is called Voronoi pattern. I use that as a pattern to celebrate this unique ecological characteristic of the site. But other than its symbolic value, it also gave me the opportunity to create different pockets of space where neighbors can have moments of pause or sit, while also clearing the access for everyone who wants to walk through the site. And so in order to create this butterfly garden, we also needed a good planting palette, where we use mix of native and adaptable non-native plants to create this seasonal and year-round beauty, as well as to promoting this butterfly habitat. And in order to learn more about butterfly habitat and how it worked, I talked to this guy who's an entomologist in Academy of Science, and he decided to come to Ridge Lane, and we went for a walk where he gives me different tips on how I can make this butterfly garden, and also what are my constraints in this way. So one thing that I learned is that butterflies need two different plants in order to survive. One of them is nectar plants, where butterfly feeds from them. The other one is host plant, where the caterpillar feed from the leaves. And in general, butterflies are more flexible with their nectar plant, but they're very picky about their host plants. And this is different for every different butterflies. They have many different they prefer different plants for their host plants. So what I did was I studied this different pattern of butterflies that we can expect to see in Ridge Lane in order to design for them. So it's actually like designing for people. When you're designing for people, you need to know who you are designing for. And this was the same process that I needed to know what are these butterflies and what they need in order to survive on Ridge Lane. So the planting design that you see on Ridge Lane is both it has all host and nectar plants, and it's more than just creating this beautiful planting design. It's also functional both for people and pollinators. So Ridge Lane was also certified in North American Butterfly as a certified butterfly garden that can be a resource for butterfly population. And we use that on our community board to let people now know how this park is effective, not just for people, but it's a very sensitive environment. And that also creates a sense of attachment for people to be responsible for the space that they're using. So in spring 2016, the construction of the first phase started, and construction observation was a big part of this process because we wanted to make sure the design is executed per per neighborhood needs, and also to answer any question that our contractor had during this process. So the first phase was they cleared the site from any plants that we didn't want, also from any debris and rocks. Then they start grading the site based on the design that we provided, and they made it ready for concrete pour. Then they framed the concrete path based on the design that was provided to them. So in my first design, we wanted to use 3 different colors of concrete to create this different experience through the walking through the site. But we later find out having this 3 different color concrete will add to the cost of this project. It's a very low budget project. We need to think of how we are spending our money, and also it will take a longer time to build it. So what we did, we created the samples on site to find a way to create this different textures on different modules. So what we did was 2 different acid wash. One of them was after they made the concrete, they put acid. In this case, they used sugar and water, which works as acid, and it's more environmentally friendly. Where they use it the first day after they poured the concrete. So this acid exposed some of the aggregate in the concrete. The second one is the same process, however, it's on the second day, so there are still some aggregates exposed, but in general, it creates more smooth path. The last one was seeded concrete, where we used pea gravel on top of concrete, and it gives us a more bigger textures. So the pouring concrete, they started from one side to the other and used wire mesh for like in between the concrete. And so after they poured the concrete, contractors made it smooth and made it ready for different finishes that we wanted. And about a week after, neighbors were able to have their first community meeting on site on a fresh concrete. So on June 2016, it was the opening day of Ridge Lane, where this diverse group of neighbors gathered on Ridge Lane and celebrated opening of their new neighborhood park. And it was very interesting to see how these people who live very close to each other, they didn't know each other for a long time. And thanks to this common ground that they have now, they're starting to know each other and talk to their neighbors. Okay, so what was once known as a hazardous site and people were scared to walk through it turned into this vibrant open space that became a source of pride for this neighborhood. Sorry. Okay. So the other elements that we used on site was gabion benches, where we used recycled concrete and rocks from the site to fill this gabion bench. We used different bollard lights that illuminate the site during the night, but also it avoids any kind of glare into the surrounding buildings. And one of the most rewarding moments was to see people who weren't able to access the site actually use it and enjoy it on their daily basis. So as any landscape project, maintenance is a big part of Ridge Lane too. And actually having the first parcel done and people seeing how effective that is and how it can add to their community, they started to have different community cleanup days, which happens every second Saturday of every month, where people gather on Ridge Lane and clean, and if there's any garbage or pick weeds. And they don't just go on first parcel, but also they go to the other phases to make this this vacant lot that they have more pleasant for people to use. And it's not only about cleaning the site, it becomes this neighborhood ritual that people really enjoy seeing and talking to their neighbors. For example, even if they can help with this project, but they also just join their community to be part of this social engagement. We also had another butterfly workshop on Ridge Lane where we educate neighbors about their local butterflies and how they can, and we teach them how they can apply the same principles in their backyard in order to create their own butterfly garden. And on that day, people were able to use butterfly attractive plants and seeds, and also they used the stickers to create their planting plan. So this commitment of Ridge Lane neighbors was recognized by city, where they award them this certificate of recognition from different departments. Sorry. So after the success of the first parcel, the neighbors and other government agencies, they decided to move forward and work on the rest of Ridge Lane. And we were able to gather funds from a community challenge grant for 2 parcels, and we are hoping to get more for the following 2. But in the meantime, before getting ready for the design of future parcels, I also went back and get post-occupancy evaluation to see how people are using the site and how people are making the space their own. And I studied different patterns of use of how people interact with each other and where are the parts that they prefer. So one thing that we learned was having site elements such as benches and community boards can promote to unplanned social engagement, and so that's a positive thing that we want to see throughout the whole design, and so we're going to use that in future parcels. Also, we learned how each parcel has, even though it's very small, but also has its unique microclimate, which affects butterflies and also plants and how they grow within this small space. So the other thing that we find out about 2 months ago was that Ridge Lane has gopher problem. And so gophers go and find the roots of the plants that they find they are tasty and kill them. And that was something that we didn't want to see in future. And as a part of our maintenance, we provided this list of plants that are gopher resistant. And so we use those on Ridge Lane, as well as we will continue using them for future parcels. So post-occupancy is very important. So in order to have this coherent design and make the whole parcels consistent, we use the same modular system that reacted to different topography of Ridge Lane. And this pattern gives us the opportunity to work with different rocky situations and to turn around the rockier part and preserve them as this valuable characteristic of the site. And so these modules were choreographed in a way that to create this exciting experience. And so it doesn't just connect from point A to B, but also create this journey through their walk on Ridge Lane. And so in order, we also try to save as much as we could the bedrocks on Ridge Lane. And so for that purpose, we use concrete and wood. So wood because wood steps, because of their minimal footprint, we didn't have to excavate the whole bedrock, but also it will cost us a lot more, less to build. And so the parts that you see that are wooden, it means there are more bedrocks, and the parts with concrete means they have softer soil. The planting design on Ridge Lane was also very site-specific, and it reacted to this rocky condition as well as their sun exposure. So on the parts that we had it was more rocky, we used succulents and plants that are more adaptable to rocky conditions, and the rest of the planting was this mix of perennials and native and non-natives to support this butterfly habitat, as well as providing year-round beauty. So this is on top of parcel 4, where we had this big landing. We used gabion benches as bollards, so the cars cannot park in this spot, but also will promote more social engagement by letting people sit there and talk to their neighbors. So in this process, we also worked with landscape architect from DPW to make sure the design is based on ADA and other city codes. So what we already accomplished with this design is one parcel that is done, but the big thing is creating this community between this neighborhood, they were really distant from each other for many years, and that's one of the most rewarding parts, to see if actually people using it and enjoying it together. And for me, it's as a future landscape architect, it's very exciting to see if this small piece of land can give so much to people and their environment. That makes me more excited to work on bigger projects and to make greater impacts for people and environment. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great. It's really interesting to hear how integrated the butterfly habitat and sort of how you were able to create a design concept out of the structure of, or the geometries of the butterfly's wings and stuff. I thought that was pretty amazing.
Thank you.
And it's also just great to see, student work that actually becomes a real place. So I hope it inspires all of you to keep going. So why don't we take some questions? We had at one point about 21 people online, so
Yay.
Hopefully they're asking some questions. And does anyone in the room want to start? Okay, I have a question. I am curious at what point the Department of Public Works got involved in the project.
Okay.
So you were working with the neighbors, but then at some point it was like, wow, this could happen. So when did you have to involve the city, and sort of how did that go?
Well, they were involved from beginning. Like
Okay.
all the presentations that we have through the school, there were members from DPW and Parks Alliance who were there. But when they decided to build it, it was when we worked together, like one-to-one, and like really solve those problems of different budget problems that we have. We wanted to make it cheaper, and also really addressing what users really want. So we worked more after that, but they were involved from beginning. Yeah.
Do you have any online questions?
Hello, my name is Catherine. I work here at the Landscape Architecture Department at the Academy of Art, and I just want to say thank you to everyone online who has joined us. Nahal definitely has a following and so many people who love her work, both online and in person, so we're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
We do have Elizabeth joining from Martinez, California, and then we have someone, Mr. Witt, joining from the Netherlands. So thank you all for joining. I have my own question, so I'm going to be a little selfish here. Nahal, could you share a little bit about how you found this field and sort of what brought you to landscape architecture?
Well, my background was in interior design, and while I really liked designing and solving problems, but I also found it limiting. And it was in my last semester where I was designing for this spa project, and I had a chance to really design like exterior spaces, and I feel like I like this a lot more than just designing interior. I also in the same project I worked. I learned about this concept called biophilia, where how people function better when they are connected to nature or elements that mimic nature, and that really reinforced my decision to start learning more about landscape architecture.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Jeff.
I was curious when you were talking about your planting plan, and the people were, putting down plants where they thought they should go.
Yeah.
And you've had this process of engagement with the community, and I think a lot of designers, there's sort of a stress plane or something between where you have part of your vision and what you want to design and express, and then how you listen to the community and integrate what they want to do, because you really want to do what they want to do, but then you're also a designer. And so I'm just curious how you negotiated that process.
Well, I think the most important part about community engagement is community education and how you teach them about why you're making this decision. And I think that's the most important part of this process, where you can really tell them the reason behind it. I think it also creates this sense of trust between landscape designers and community, where they can see that things that you're doing, they're based on this scientific fact, and it's very difficult to please everyone in this community engagement. But I think one thing that I found very interesting is behind every comment there's a reason. So for example, we had this comment in our group that someone wanted security cameras to look at Ridge Lane and make it safer, where we had to talk to them like, this is not gonna work. it won't promote to the safety, but also will make it look scarier than what it is. But if we create this design that is more vibrant, that way you can have the safer environment, and you won't have any need to have the security cameras. So yeah, I think the best part of this process is to educate the public about not only about how they can make it, but also about what are these difficulties that we have as landscape architects or any other design field.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We do have one question from Elizabeth, and the question is, how did you acquire the support of the community for this project? So to kind of build on that, how was the conversation started, or how did you connect in the very beginning?
So how it started was that they were looking for this design that can really address their needs, and they came to our school and asked for our studio to design for them. And we had different meetings with the neighbors where they talk about what are the things that they want, and we were involved with them from the beginning to really see who are these people that we are designing for.
Awesome, thanks.
Anybody else? And I have tons of questions, but I don't want to hold the mic. So, as all of you landscape architecture students know, being able to communicate the design that you are putting forth is really essential to the success of your project, because they have to, the community, who for the most part, most people aren't well versed in reading drawings and necessarily understanding. And one of the reasons I think that Nahal won her award, I mean, there were a number of reasons that revolved around how she listened to the community and the strength of the idea and the project and getting it built, and really that was a huge thing. But it was also the fact that it was presented in a way, the graphics, the renderings, the design concepts, the analysis, that is very accessible to people who don't necessarily have a design background. And so I know that you were able to use some drone technology to do aerial surveys, and you have these kind of different kinds of rendering tools and graphics. And I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit to how you thought about organizing this and putting it together, and the kinds of tools that you use to do it.
Yeah.
Because I do think the clarity of communication is part of why the impact is so great.
Yeah, so I have as you said, it's very important to be able to communicate your design intentions. Even if you have the best design in the world, you still need to communicate it to your client to make them want to build it. And that is especially true about community projects too, because it's very difficult to speak this language that everyone can understand it. So what we did with this project, we used a lot of existing photos and photos from existing situations, so the design is not something that is very out of context, and people can relate to it and make it more touchable. And we used a lot of drone photos because we didn't want to just focus on Ridge Lane. In every image, we wanted to focus on how this is part of the bigger community. This is part of this greater context, and it will affect this whole neighborhood. And the drone photos which Eric took helped us a lot with that. And also, these are the shots that people cannot see in their daily basis, when it surprises people to see them from different perspective. If this works. Yeah, so for example, the first one that I showed doesn't work. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it really helps to, not just for site analysis, but also for different renderings. Ridge Lane is very small to really have to show what's in this drone photo. It's very tricky to get a good shot of Ridge Lane in the context, which Eric did a great job on that. So this was one of the parts that we used drone. Ridge Lane is, again, it's small enough to observe the site, but it can also be used for bigger sites where people want to have construction observation. And also for the site, yeah, for this one where we wanted to focus on Ridge Lane, but also we wanted to imply that this is not just about Ridge Lane, it's about this greater, context where Ridge Lane is located at. This is also a drone shot that was taken in 2 different photos. We connect them together and made one image that is, I think it's pretty seamless. And cut a section through it and highlighted the parts that Ridge Lane is located.
Okay, thank you. And the other part, it's not part of this presentation, was some animations, both overhead and in, that are really cool.
Yeah,
that's really
also
helps you to understand the space.
Yeah, that's also it's something exciting that they can really be in that space and see the changes from what it used to be to what it is now. And neighbors printed those photos and put them together and use it on community boards so the other neighbors can see this change that is happening on their neighborhood.
When you were working with the neighbors, did you present multiple design possibilities and then they kind of honed in on this butterfly thing, or did you propose like one option, or how did that work when you were in the early stages?
In our studio, I had 3 different concepts that I presented to our instructor, but I worked on the one that was very stronger from the other options, and because we had this limited presentations to the neighbors, I just focused on the one that is more pleasing and it works better.
Okay. That's great. Any other questions or comments? How are the butterflies doing?
They're actually doing great. It's very seasonal, so each butterfly has its own season. But they are there and they're happy. Yeah.
They're on migratory routes, aren't they? They're sort of stopping
some of
by.
them. Some of them are.
Some of them just live there.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's very. They're limited to different locations and through San Francisco, because they are limited to the spot that they have their source nectar and host plants, so they are very fragmented through the city. Yeah, there are this butterflies on Market Street. I don't know if you guys know about it. They're called tiger swallowtails of Market, where they are adapted to sycamore trees on Market Street. They use that as a host plant, and so it's basically this canyon for these butterflies to travel through, and it's one big subject for whoever wants to design. They need to consider this tigers of Market. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the city will.
Yeah, they actually had different butterfly walks where they invited people to be part of this educational sessions and teach them about about different spots that they can see this tiger swallowtails. I was part of that too. It's very interesting.
Okay, the last question I have has to do with how you worked with the budget. So you kind of got your design together. You were obviously thinking early on that this is not a multi-million-dollar museum or something. This is a community group. There's going to be limited resources, and I believe you said they had a matching grant.
Yeah.
So how did you go about actually integrating the design that you had with the budget and the amount of money you had to execute it? Like how did that work?
So I actually, the first design that I had, I created this very interesting bench with precast concrete that I wanted to make it like the same system as the path that we have. But we couldn't build that because we have limited budget. So on different phases of design, that's what we worked on to think about how we can reduce the cost. And so we actually work on the future parcels. The proposal, we worked on it twice. The first one was expensive. It was very expensive to build, so we designed it again with wooden steps to make it less expensive by cutting the budget from excavating the bedrocks. So it was this process that we went back to what we had and think about how we can reduce. But there were also some elements that we wanted to invest on it, such as our bollard lights. We wanted something that is effective, and we didn't want to go back and buy a new, for example, lighting system that works better. So we invested on those to get a best product that we can. And because it's something that is repeated in all the parcels, we want it to be consistent and functional. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments? Anybody online? You what? Oh, okay.
Elizabeth from Martinez wanted to say thank you for answering her question, and then she just commented that she's learning a lot about how important it is to know the quote customer who will be in the neighborhood every day.
Yeah.
So she
Thank
says
you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we will close. I want to thank everybody who's online and who's here that came, and Nahal, thank you for coming. It was such a pleasure to hear your presentation. And next Thursday, we will have Marcel Wilson from Bionic, who's a partner at Bionic, come and talk. So I hope you guys will join us for that lecture. So thank you, Nahal.
Okay, thank you.